Anyway, we would love to hear your confession, of course. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. We're back and running. Here comes tonight's tale. It comes from Buster. Thanks, Buster. Simon and the Juggernauts of Justice. I would just say before I start this one that my guess is, even if you're a seasoned Confessions listener, you might not guess what happens at the end.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's really, yes. My confession relates, and it's appropriate, right? It's a very, very appropriate tale. My confession relates to a Portuguese airport on my return journey to the UK. End of holidays, you know. It'd been a particularly relaxed holiday with glorious sunshine and great company. Now I was to return to the dreary weathered UK. And to top it off, I had the grim prospects of finding a job post-university during a recession. Now, to put everything into context, my friends consider me a careful Eddie. I am paranoid about misplacing or leaving items of belongings out. If I leave a restaurant with my friends, I will feign an excuse to go back to the table to check the footwells in case I dropped anything. My friends first thought this was funny, but now almost all of them were annoyed by having me wait for all the incessant checks.
Yeah.
At the airport security, which is usually a place of irrational anxiety for me normally, we were met with a long, winding queue to get through. Mid-queuing in security, my friends began to remove the contents of their pockets, their belts and shoes to make the whole process quicker. One of them, Jason, points at my belt and says, "Don't you think you should remove that?" I replied daringly, "If they want me to take it off, I'll let them do it."
Oh, right. Okay.
It doesn't sound like a careful Eddie thing to say to me. It sounds like an idiot thing to say. But anyway, Father Simon, I'm not really sure why I said this. No, Buster, neither are we, and can only assume that I was putting on a brave show in front of my mates. Surely my belt had minimal metal traces, and I'm a very careful person, as you remember. And, you know, it shouldn't set off the sensors, should it? Anyway, what's the worst that can happen? Sure enough, anyway, the meandering line came to its end and I was met with a security operative. This lady meant business, I could tell. She wore a stern expression and my confidence dwindled in her presence. Began to regret not taking off the belt. Her suspicious gaze tore through my soul and I was frozen. She just gesticulated for me to go through the sensor. Holding my breath, which of course makes all the difference.
Yes.
It blocks off all rays.
Yeah.
I walked through. Red light, and a loud beep, and I'm brought right in front of the lady and she begins to frisk me. Now I'm trying my hardest to avoid eye contact with my friend Jason for fear of judgment and his "I told you so" eyes, which I think is entirely appropriate. What do they look like anyway? As I'm sure you've already guessed, it is the belt, and she asked me to remove it and go through the sensor again. To remove myself from the situation, I ran through, which of course again makes
That's not allowed.
all the difference. Anyway, I came through unscathed. Success, I thought, and proceeded to join the others on the other side. But where was my handbag, the carry-on bag, I should say? In the midst of being frisked, I had not realized that my bag had also been placed on the inspection line. Why was it there? This couldn't be right. I was so sure that I hadn't packed anything that would raise eyebrows. The bag was being accompanied by the same security operative. She goes over the spiel about had I packed my own luggage? Did I have any prohibited items? She proceeded to check my bag. She pulls out a litre bottle of water and a disapproving frown. She tells me she must dispose of it, but since my parents, Father Simon, had always raised me to waste nothing, I asked her if I could drink it first. Probably hearing this 100 times a day from other passengers, she begrudgingly said yes, but you must go through the sensor again and drink it from the other side. Again, I have no idea what the logic is there. Anyway, I said thank you and I downed the bottle. I was nearly through this whole palaver, but then this same security personnel was at my bag and found something else. What was it this time? Well, she pulls out a large bottle of barely used sunscreen lotion. You hadn't really thought about this, Buster, had you really? My heart sunk. What was going to happen to me next? My imagination jumped to a scene from a thriller where security takes me to a secret and dark room in the basement and flicks on a pair of latex... Oh, I wasn't going to read this bit. Anyway, this security lady has a face that says, "You absolute idiot." Thankfully, the scene I had imagined did not materialize, and she simply, tiredly begins explaining to me again that it will have to be discarded. But I interrupt. This is where it goes really weird.
Okay.
I say, "Can I use the rest of it?"
What?
So for the next 10 minutes, I set the sensor off a couple of times by lathering up on the other side, keeping going because I need to use it all up. And I keep on rubbing it in and rubbing it in and rubbing it in until I've used up all of the suntan cream.
What?
My friends and all the staff shook their heads, but surely being kind to my skin isn't a sin. I mean...
You don't need it.
So, I mean, I told you it was weird. Pastor says, I don't ask forgiveness from my friends who made fun of me on the whole flight back because of my now ghost light factor 50 complexion on a flight to the UK. Also not at the security officer. She should expect the mistakes happen, especially from relaxed holiday makers who may not be in the most mentally active state. Plus, she gave me enough punishment anyway. But my request of forgiveness extends to all those holiday makers made to wait for this well-meaning but underprepared fellow traveller, holding them up in the line at the security gate. They must have heard the alert sounding 5 times or more. I was only trying to be a good son, not waste any water, and not waste the Earth's resources, and to look
That's a stretch.
and to look after my skin. I was looking after my skin, says Buster from the Wirral. I think you're on a very sticky wicket here, Buster. Sister Susie from the pub.
Buster, yes, yeah, I see where you're going with this. You know, you should put sun cream on. You don't need to use a whole bottle. That's
Not
just
indoors.
very silly. But also, no one likes being at the airport when they're coming home from holiday. You feel rubbish that you finished your holiday. You feel rubbish that you're in a queue. I can't forgive you, because if I was one of those people behind you, I would be very cross.
Yeah.
So not forgiven for me.
I mean, use a little bit up, but
I mean,
keep going. Brother Matthew.
I mean, imagine being in the queue behind this bloke going, right, he's downing the water now, is he? What is he doing now? He's pouring all of the sun cream over him again and again and again. And he's going to use... I mean, that stuff really takes a while to rub in. Also, you're indoors the whole time. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. However, you know, it's first day back, isn't it? So let's just forgive. What? Just forgive.
Wow.
Because, you know,
It's a
first day
turn up.
back.
People's verdict. The people's verdict, please, on the text 61054. Forgiven or not? Do you forgive Buster? Yes or no? The people's verdict on the text 61054. First word is Simon. Of confessions kicking off today with Buster from the Wirral. People's verdict is incoming. We would love to hear your confession. If you get your confession read out, by the way, you get a smart speaker.
Yes, you do.
Buster, who knows what he's going to make with his smart speaker? Because he sounds an interesting piece of work. So.
Piece of work.
Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Here come the people's verdict. Buster, listen up.
So it is split. Ian Houston in Renfrewshire says, completely forgiven. As a fur-haired Scotsman, you can't be too careful with sunscreen. Well
Indoors?
done.
With the whole bottle? With the big cube behind you?
I know. Julian Southend says, not forgiven. What a load of performative attention seeking. Not giving a thought to the security guard who's got enough to deal with. Muppet.
Yes.
Corporal P in Quadring in Lincolnshire. I don't forgive. Being ex-military myself. You know the routine when going through security. Come on, what's wrong with a little wastage? Michelle, waste not a drop. Forgiven for not wasting his products.
He's
even
indoors.
if he was wasting everyone else's time. I get it. And finally, Fernando says, not forgiven. I had to queue in the bank for half an hour this morning because someone couldn't get the bank details right for a transfer she wanted to make. The queue was along the pavement when I left. Not forgiven.
If you get your confession read out, confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk, we will send you a smart speaker because that's what the deal is. Keep it on Greatest Hits Radio. The confession music is playing. Today's confession comes from Graham in Portsmouth. Graham has already got the smart speaker, whatever the verdict. Let's see what you make of this, because we'll be after the people's verdict on 61054. First word is Simon. Graham says, Father Simon and the occasionally compassionate collective. I seek forgiveness for the part that I played in an incident that took place involving a Jack Russell Terrier and a railway crossing.
Okay.
Now, it's a captivating opening line.
It is. Very good.
There's inherent dangers, obviously. I should pause here to make absolutely clear, no animals were hurt in the making of this story. In short, the dog in question fared immeasurably better than the average hamster in many of the confessions you air. In fact, let's put that in the past tense, shall we, Gareth? That we used to air.
We don't do those anymore.
Back before times changed. To set the scene, I was a passenger in a car waiting at the aforementioned railway crossing, and so the story played out in front of me as if watching a drive-in movie. Entering the screen from the right was an older gentleman who shuffled along with the help of 2 canes and 1 canine. He moved so slowly it was difficult to know if he was actually moving at all. And glacially he crossed the road in front of us, taking advantage of the gates being down to give him safe passage. The dog ambled along in step, evidently well used to the snail-like progress and not looking too fussed about travelling any faster. And both were happy in their own slow-motion world, until the railway gates began to open, while the old man was only halfway across. In fact, both remained happy in their slow-motion world, apparently oblivious to the reopening of the road. Oblivious, that is, until the driver of the first queuing car wound down his window and offered some positive criticism of the old man's athletic prowess.
Okay.
"Bother," he said, "it would perhaps be better all round if you could see your way to moving slightly faster." And he concluded with an epithet, "You old scoundrel," or something maybe more colourful, Father Simon. Amazingly, this did prove to energise the old man somewhat, but unfortunately only for him to stop, turn round and offer some choice advice of his own. "Who are you," he asked, "to offer this criticism to me? Why don't you mind your own business, you young so-and-so?"
Yes.
Well, Simon, suffice to say that the name-calling and profanity quota only increased from this point. It was like a tennis rally in which each player's shot gets more and more stupendously spectacular, building to a dizzying crescendo of expletives.
Brilliant.
I learned a few new words that day, and I confess to already knowing a fair many. The verbal jousting continued. The driver with his head now jutting out of his side window, the old man standing resolutely in front of his bonnet, both fine exponents of professional level profanity and neither looking to concede any time soon. And such was their staying power that the bell rang as if marking the end of a boxing round, the lights flashed and the gates came down once again.
Oh!
The descent of the gates occasioned a similar descent of the car driver's manners, and let's face it, these started from a perilously low position in the first place. He decided to take advantage of his open window to add semaphore to his verbal messaging. Only not the kind of semaphore you learn in the Sea Scouts.
No.
It may well have been some form of naval signalling, however, because the old man seemed to understand it rather well, as often happens in Portsmouth. But hampered by holding 2 canes and a dog lead, the old man seemed to realise that he would need to alleviate himself of at least some of these in order to join the conversation fully. He found a railing and tied up the dog, then leant solidly and stoically on one cane whilst raising the other and bringing it crashing down on the bonnet of the car. "Take that, my friend," he said. Now, not feeling inhibited by the physical constraints of his car, the driver alighted his vehicle and embarked on another tirade of new words and confusing hand signals. "You rotter, he said. "You tear away," returned the old man. And so this continued for another few minutes until the railway gates opened again. In fact, the altercation continued and would perhaps still be going on now were it not punctuated by the angelic ascension of the Jack Russell Terrier, who climbed majestically into the air above them, fastened securely to the railway barrier. He looked down on the combatants, almost in judgment upon them with an admonishing look.
He's tied to the railway barrier?
So the dog is not tied to a railing. The dog has been tied to the railway barrier, and the dog is now raising to the heavens. Father Simon, helped by other motorists, the dog was returned to terra firma in relatively short order, apparently no worse for wear. In fact, he looked like he'd go on it again, given a chance. 2 rides for 6pence.
Lovely.
Yet still I seek forgiveness as much from the dog as from the old man. And no, this story does not end with me confessing to be the driver or even a passenger in the driver's car. That driver was ignorant, disrespectful and rude, and I like to think he may have been caught speeding very soon after he raced away with a wheel spin and a final foul-mouthed flourish. I was a passenger in the car behind, and I did nothing to intervene. Yet, if it was solely my inactivity that had troubled me these many years hence, I feel I could live with my guilt on the basis that the old man gave every bit as good as he got. No, Simon, I seek forgiveness for the further with which I had said, only moments earlier, that old fool has just tied his dog to the railway gate. Wouldn't it be funny if the gate went up? And the chuckling satisfaction with which I said soon after, told you so. Gareth. Anyway, so just to repeat, because these things do need repeating. Dog was fine. Dog was fine. In fact, the dog seemed to be enjoying it, and it was clearly just an accident, though clearly quite an amusing accident, you might say. Sister Susie from the pub is the voice of authority and responsibility.
Well, I feel don't forgive the person in the front of the car because he was a bit mean, but then it seemed like the guy was enjoying himself as well, the old man. So, Graham, I don't think you did anything wrong. Maybe you should have said, oh, maybe don't tie him there, but maybe you didn't want to get involved. So I'm going to forgive you.
Okay, forgiveness from Susie. It's always reliable. Brother Matthew.
I mean, Graham has really painted a picture here. I love the description of it being like a tennis rally where they're insulting each other and giving it back and forth. Loved all of that. It is a salutary lesson, isn't it? You should just stay calm when you're in the car and behind the wheel and not lose your rag. Doesn't work for me, sadly, that advice. Never follow it myself.
Really?
No.
I imagine you as a quiet, retiring person.
I am very much Dalai Lama behind the wheel. So I am going to say definitely forgiven.
Okay, so it's double helping of forgiveness in the studio for Gareth from Portsmouth, who already has his smart speaker. But the question is, does it get the public's vote? Because it's the people's verdict that we're after now. Can you text, please? It's 61054. You start your message with Simon. 61054. A confession to deal with first of all. And today's confession came from Gareth in Portsmouth. Involved a Jack Russell Terrier, a railway crossing, an old slow guy, and a very rude, objectionable guy. The people's verdict is in. Matt has it.
So, most are forgiving. Ray in Hornchurch, though, isn't, as the confession was so funny, it caused a flow of cider out of my nose.
Nice.
Carla in Cornwall, definitely forgiven. I'm absolutely hooting here while trying to make chicken goujons. Can't see for tears of laughter. That confession made my day. Great show, as always. Forgiven, says Gary in Leeds. Totally on track. A well-trained dog. And Tim and Linda finally say, they say pigs can't fly, but Jack Russell's obviously can. Well done to the old man for giving White Van Man double stick.
Excellent. Nicely done. Thank you very much indeed for contributing for the people's verdict. If you have a confession, send it now. Well, when it's ready. Confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.